Ladies and gentlemen, there is a moment in life when you realize that the fear of being alone has held you back more than any person, any failure, or any rejection ever could. There is a certain kind of fear that comes with being alone. It's a fear that has been ingrained in us from the time we were young. We are taught that being surrounded by others means we are loved, valued, and important. Society glorifies companionship, crowds, and constant interaction, making solitude seem like something to be avoided at all costs. But solitude is not loneliness. It is not isolation. It is a space, a sacred space, where true self-discovery begins. When you allow yourself to be alone, truly alone, without distractions, without external voices shaping your thoughts, you begin to see yourself for who you really are. Most people fear this silence because they don't know what they will find. They have spent so much time drowning in the expectations, opinions, and validation of others that they have forgotten what their own voice sounds like. But in solitude, there is no hiding. There is no performing. There is only truth. Many people spend their entire lives avoiding solitude because they associate it with emptiness. They believe that if they are alone, it must mean something is missing. But the truth is, solitude does not create emptiness. It reveals it. It shows you where you have been neglecting yourself, where you have been seeking external fulfillment for internal wounds. It forces you to confront the parts of yourself you have ignored, the dreams you have suppressed, and the fears you have buried. And while this process can be uncomfortable, it is necessary for growth. When you embrace solitude, you start to understand your own needs, your own desires, your own purpose. You are no longer living according to what the world tells you to be. You are living in alignment with who you truly are. You begin to see patterns in your life that were once invisible. You recognize the relationships that were built on dependency rather than connection. You see the habits that were distractions rather than nourishment. And in that awareness, you gain power. Solitude gives you clarity. It allows you to strip away the noise and get to the core of what really matters. It is in solitude that some of the greatest ideas are born, the deepest healing takes place, and the strongest sense of self is developed. When you are constantly surrounded by people, their energy, their opinions, and their expectations can cloud your own vision. But when you are alone, you get to decide what stays and what goes. You get to redefine your boundaries, your standards, and your priorities without outside influence. Some of the most powerful, successful, and fulfilled individuals in the world have one thing in common. They are not afraid to be alone. They understand that solitude is not a weakness. It is a strength. It is in solitude that they refine their vision, cultivate their creativity, and build the resilience needed to stand firm in who they are. Because when you know yourself deeply, when you have spent time in your own company and found comfort in it, there is nothing anyone can take from you. The fear of being alone is not really about solitude itself. It is about what you might find when you sit with yourself. But the truth is, what you find is not something to fear, it is something to embrace. You discover that you are not as lost as you once thought. You realize that your own presence is enough. You come to understand that solitude is not a punishment, but a gift, one that allows you to reconnect with yourself, to grow, and to build a life that is truly your own. Silence is one of the most powerful forces in the world, yet it is one of the most feared. People avoid it at all costs, filling every moment with noise, conversation, music, or distractions. They turn on the TV when they walk into an empty room, scroll endlessly on their phones, or engage in mindless chatter just to escape the discomfort of silence. But silence is not something to be feared. It is something to be embraced because within it lies a power that noise can never provide. In a world that never stops talking, silence is the space where truth emerges. It is where the mind is no longer reacting but observing. It is where the soul is no longer drowned out by the opinions of others but finally able to speak. Most people don't understand the value of silence because they have never allowed themselves to fully experience it. They assume that silence means absence, when in reality it means presence. Presence with oneself, presence with emotions, presence with clarity. When you allow silence into your life, you begin to notice things you never paid attention to before. You start hearing your own thoughts more clearly. You recognize patterns in your thinking that have been running on autopilot for years. You see where your energy has been wasted, where your fears have been dictating your actions, and where your intuition has been calling you to move in a different direction. But none of this can be realized when there is too much noise. Noise distracts, confuses, and clouds judgment. Silence, on the other hand, reveals. People who fear silence often fear themselves. They fear what will come up when the distractions are stripped away. They fear facing their own thoughts, their own wounds, their own unprocessed emotions. But growth does not happen in avoidance. It happens in confrontation. Silence forces you to listen to yourself in a way that no amount of external validation ever could. It makes you sit with the discomfort of your own thoughts, not to suffer, but to understand. And understanding is the first step toward transformation. Silence also gives you power over your words. When you learn to sit in silence, you learn the value of speech. You no longer feel the need to fill empty spaces with unnecessary words. You no longer react impulsively to everything that happens around you. Instead, you become intentional with your energy. You choose your words carefully, knowing that silence carries more weight than 1,000 empty sentences. You realize that people who talk the loudest are not always the ones who hold the most wisdom. True wisdom comes from those who have learned to listen more than they speak. In moments of silence, you connect with something deeper than yourself. Whether you call it intuition, inner wisdom, or spiritual guidance, there's a knowing that emerges when the world around you quiets down. It is in these moments that the best decisions are made, the biggest revelations occur, and the most meaningful progress is achieved. It is no coincidence that some of the greatest leaders, thinkers, and visionaries in history prioritized silence. They understood that their best ideas did not come from external noise, but from internal stillness. Learning to be comfortable with silence is one of the greatest skills a person can develop. It builds resilience, emotional intelligence, and inner peace. It allows you to detach from external chaos and reconnect with what truly matters. While most people run from silence, those who embrace it unlock a level of clarity and power that cannot be found in the constant chatter of the world. From an early age, people are conditioned to believe that they need someone or something outside of themselves to feel whole. They are taught that love, success, and happiness are things to be obtained from external sources rather than cultivated from within. Society reinforces this idea by glorifying relationships, social status, and material possessions as markers of completeness. But the truth is, you are already whole. There is nothing missing from you, and there is nothing you need to find outside of yourself to be complete. Most people spend their lives searching for validation, looking for someone to tell them they are worthy, for something to give them a sense of purpose, or for a title to make them feel important. They believe that if they just achieve the next goal, find the right partner, or earn the approval of others, they will finally feel fulfilled. But that kind of fulfillment is temporary. It is an illusion that keeps people trapped in a cycle of always chasing, always seeking, and never feeling like they are enough. True wholeness is not something that comes from the outside. It is something that has always existed within. The problem is, most people have been taught to ignore or doubt that truth. They have been led to believe that they are incomplete, that they need to be fixed, that they need to do more or be more to deserve love, happiness, or success. But real freedom begins the moment you stop believing that lie. It begins when you realize that nothing outside of you can define you, complete you, or make you more valuable than you already are. When you truly understand that you are whole, you stop looking for someone else to complete you. You stop relying on relationships, friendships, or social circles to give you a sense of identity. You stop basing your worth on whether or not someone chooses you. You begin to see that your value is not dependent on who stays in your life or who leaves. You no longer settle for relationships that drain you, for friendships that are one-sided, or for spaces where you feel unappreciated. You start choosing yourself, not out of selfishness, but out of self-awareness. Wholeness also means no longer attaching your identity to achievements. So many people believe that their worth is tied to what they accomplish, how much money they make, or how successful they appear to the world. They spend years chasing status, thinking that once they reach a certain level, they will finally feel fulfilled. But external success without internal wholeness leads to emptiness. If you do not already feel complete within yourself, no amount of money, fame, or recognition will ever be enough. There will always be another goal, another milestone, another reason to keep chasing something outside of yourself. When you recognize that you are already whole, you begin to live differently. You stop making decisions based on fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. You stop seeking approval from people who don't even understand you. You stop waiting for life to give you permission to be happy. You realize that everything you have been looking for, love, peace, confidence, purpose, has always been within you. You no longer live in a state of lack because you know that you are not lacking anything. Most importantly, understanding that you are already whole allows you to love yourself fully, not just when you are successful, not just when you look your best, not just when life is going well. You begin to embrace every part of yourself, the strengths and the flaws, the victories and the mistakes, because you see that none of it takes away from your worth. You stop waiting for external validation to tell you that you are enough, because you already know that you are. Seeking validation is one of the biggest traps people fall into. From an early age, they are taught that approval from others defines their worth. They are conditioned to believe that their value is determined by how much people like them, how well they fit in, and how much praise they receive. This need for validation becomes a driving force behind their choices, their actions, and even their sense of identity. But true freedom comes when you stop seeking validation from the outside and start finding it within yourself. Most people don't realize how much of their life is shaped by the need for approval. They pursue careers that others expect of them. They say things to please people rather than speaking their truth, and they stay in situations that no longer serve them because they are afraid of what others will think. This constant seeking of validation creates a cycle of dependency, one where self-worth is not determined by inner confidence but by external opinions. And the danger in this is that external opinions are always changing. One day people praise you and the next day they criticize you. If your worth is tied to their approval, you will always feel unstable. The truth is, no matter what you do, there will always be people who have something to say. You can be the kindest, most hardworking, most talented person in the world, and someone will still find a reason to judge you. Trying to please everyone is a battle you will never win. The more you chase approval, the more you lose yourself. You start shaping your life around what others expect, rather than what truly makes you happy. You make decisions based on fear. Fear of disappointing people, fear of standing out, fear of not being accepted. But a life built on fear is not a life of freedom. Real confidence comes when you stop looking outside of yourself for validation. It comes when you trust your own voice more than the opinions of others. It comes when you stop waiting for permission to be who you are. When you are constantly seeking approval, you give your power away. You let other people dictate how you feel about yourself. But when you decide that your worth is not up for debate, that it is not something others can give or take away, you take that power back. Letting go of the need for validation does not mean ignoring feedback or being closed off to growth. It means knowing the difference between constructive criticism and unnecessary opinions. It means listening to advice that aligns with your truth while letting go of judgment that comes from people who do not understand your path. It means standing firm in your decisions, even when they are unpopular. It means valuing your own self-respect more than temporary approval. When you stop seeking validation, you also stop fearing rejection. You realize that not everyone will understand you, and that's okay. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone. You don't need to be liked by everyone to be valuable. You don't need to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. The moment you stop chasing approval, you start attracting the right people, the ones who respect you for who you truly are, not for who you pretend to be. Most importantly, when you stop seeking validation, you gain peace. You stop overanalyzing every decision. You stop worrying about how you are perceived. You stop needing constant reassurance to feel good about yourself. Instead, you find stability within. You build an unshakable foundation of self-trust. And when you trust yourself, nothing anyone says or thinks can shake you. Letting go of toxic attachments is one of the most difficult yet necessary steps in personal growth. People often hold on to relationships, friendships, habits, and environments that no longer serve them, simply because they fear change. They convince themselves that familiarity is better than uncertainty, even if that familiarity is draining their energy, lowering their self-worth, and keeping them stuck. But the truth is, not everyone is meant to stay in your life, and not everything you once needed is meant to be part of your future. Toxic attachments come in many forms. Sometimes it's a relationship that you've outgrown, but you stay because you're afraid of being alone. Other times it's a friendship that has become one-sided, where you give and give but receive nothing in return. It can also be a work environment that no longer aligns with your values, but you stay because you fear starting over. It can even be a mindset, a way of thinking that has kept you playing small, doubting yourself, and settling for less than you deserve. Whatever the attachment may be, one thing is certain: holding on to what is toxic prevents you from receiving what is meant for you. The reason people struggle to let go is because of comfort. Even when something is unhealthy, it can feel familiar, and familiarity gives the illusion of safety. But true safety doesn't come from staying in places that make you unhappy. True safety comes from knowing that you have the power to walk away from anything that no longer aligns with your peace, your growth, and your purpose. Letting go of toxic attachments does not mean you don't care. It does not mean you are heartless, selfish, or ungrateful for the experiences you've had. It simply means that you are choosing yourself. It means recognizing when something is taking more from you than it is giving. It means valuing your energy, your time, and your well-being enough to walk away from anything that drains you more than it fulfills you. One of the hardest truths to accept is that some people are only meant to be in your life for a season. Not everyone is meant to walk the entire journey with you. Some people were placed in your life to teach you a lesson, to help you grow, or to show you what you don't want. And once their purpose in your life is complete, holding on to them only causes pain. The same applies to habits, routines, and beliefs that once served you but are now holding you back. Growth requires release. You cannot step into a new chapter while clinging to an old one. The moment you start letting go, you make space for something better. You create room for relationships that are mutual, for opportunities that align with your goals, and for an environment that nourishes you instead of depleting you. But none of this can come into your life if your hands are still full of what you refuse to release. Letting go is an act of strength, not weakness. It takes courage to walk away from what is comfortable but toxic. It takes wisdom to recognize when something is no longer meant for you. And it takes self-love to choose yourself over a situation that is causing you more harm than good. The more you practice letting go, the more you realize that you are not losing anything. You are making room for what is truly meant to be. Standing in your truth is one of the most powerful things you can do. It means being completely honest with yourself about who you are, what you believe, and what you want from life. It means no longer pretending to be someone you're not just to fit in, no longer dimming your light to make others comfortable, and no longer hiding your dreams out of fear of judgment. It means living authentically, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's unpopular, and even when it requires walking alone. Most people are afraid to stand in their truth because they worry about what others will think. They fear rejection, criticism, or losing relationships that are built on expectations rather than authenticity. They choose to conform, to shrink, to silence themselves in order to be accepted. But the cost of living inauthentically is far greater than the discomfort of standing alone. When you betray yourself to please others, you carry an invisible weight, a weight that slowly drains your confidence, your energy, and your sense of self. The truth is, not everyone will understand you. Not everyone will support your journey. Some people will try to discourage you, not because they truly doubt you, but because your courage reminds them of their own fears. Some will distance themselves because they are used to the version of you that played small. And some will criticize you simply because they do not have the strength to step into their own truth. But none of that should stop you from being who you are meant to be. When you stand in your truth, you attract what is meant for you. You stop chasing relationships, opportunities, and environments that were never truly aligned with you in the first place. You begin to find people who appreciate you for who you are, not for who they want you to be. You discover doors opening that were once closed, simply because you finally have the courage to walk toward them. You gain a sense of peace that comes from knowing you are no longer living for the approval of others, but for the fulfillment of your own purpose. Standing in your truth also means speaking your truth. It means no longer staying silent when something goes against your values. It means having the courage to say no when something does not align with your vision. It means expressing your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs even when they are not popular. It does not mean being confrontational or forcing your opinions onto others, but rather being firm in your convictions and refusing to compromise who you are just to be accepted. The more you embrace your truth, the more powerful you become. You stop fearing rejection because you realize that losing people who do not align with your truth is not really a loss at all. You stop fearing failure because you understand that growth comes from taking risks, not from playing it safe. You stop second-guessing yourself because you learn to trust your intuition, your experience, and your inner wisdom. You become unshakable, not because life stops challenging you, but because you no longer allow fear to dictate your choices. Living in your truth is not always easy. It requires courage, resilience, and the willingness to walk a path that others may not understand. But the reward is worth it. When you stand in your truth, you are no longer living according to what the world expects. You are living according to who you truly are. You are no longer trapped by fear. You are free. You are no longer seeking permission. You are giving yourself the life you deserve. When you stop fearing being alone, you step into a life of true freedom. You no longer seek validation from others because you understand that your worth is not defined by external approval. You embrace silence not as something to be feared, but as a space for clarity, growth, and self-discovery. You recognize that you are already whole, that nothing outside of you completes you, and that your happiness is not dependent on anyone else. You let go of toxic attachments, no longer holding on to relationships, habits, or environments that drain your energy and limit your potential. You free yourself from the need to conform, to please, to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. Instead, you choose to stand in your truth, to speak your truth, and to live in a way that is fully aligned with who you are. This is what real freedom looks like. Not the absence of challenges, not the elimination of solitude, but the ability to walk confidently in your own power. It is the peace that comes from knowing that you are enough, the strength that comes from trusting yourself, and the fulfillment that comes from living a life that is truly yours.